Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. I hope you can hear me. My name is Mazwe Majola from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. Thank you so much for joining us again tonight for another insightful, instructive, informative, thought-provoking session that we are going to have. We are here as leaders, we are here as scholars to learn from each other, to empower each other, to sharpen each other so that we can grow, because leadership, it's about empowerment. Leadership, it's about development. Leadership, it's about growth. Those people who stop developing themselves, or those leaders who stop developing themselves, they quick become obsolete. So that is why we meet every Wednesdays here since 2020, during the hard lockdown, when the country was very despondent and leaders very dispirited. We needed to create a platform where we would encourage each other and sharpen each other and admonish each other wherever possible, and correct each other as leaders, because this is a safe space for leaders. We've got leaders coming from all walks of life, so participate here and who attend here. We've got scholars from different universities. We've got leaders from government, from private sector, politicians, members of the media. Yeah, you name them, from religious communities and from wider communities. As long as you're a leader, and as long as you're an aspiring leader, this is your space and this is your home. It's a safe space. It's where we meet and we just talk to each other honestly, sincerely, and openly, because that's the name of the game. That's what we really need to happen. So we know tonight, again, as it has been happening in the last few weeks, that we do have a challenge of the ESCOM load shedding. Obviously, our members will be affected, but we will start with whoever is here. And please don't get jittery if you see others being kicked out, and obviously others will be joining us as and when they get their lights back. So tonight we are having my brother. I'm going to be introducing him shortly, who will be empowering us tonight. We'll listen to him, and then we'll have a wonderful conversation, as we always do. So welcome to our members, to our regulars, those men and women who are here every Wednesdays or as often as they can, who really are here. We learn a lot from each other. Really, we learn a lot from each other. Apart from that, we run a university, because indeed we do run a university, and we provide different qualifications, your BAs, your MBAs, your master's level, even at PhD's level. So that universities do have, but also even just these sessions, they empower us so much. People are now beginning to asking for a formal, a professional body. So we are busy with that to explore that possibility, so that people can get their professional ratings and also from different professional bodies where they're coming from. So it's a platform for leaders and people, as I'm saying, that who are joining us almost every week. And those people can attest, those people like me who attend every Wednesdays will tell you that we really learn a lot every day or every time we meet, because that's a beauty with leaders, great leaders, scholars, academics, because the higher you go is the humble you become. You want to learn from another person. People who attend these sessions, I always say that the top people from all walks of life. But I'm so humbled to see many of them come here, and they do come here every Wednesday because people, they realize that, I mean, sometimes it's just wonderful just to come listen to another fellow. The following week, it might be you. Another one will be listening to you. And we exchange like that because it's a community of leaders. We are all leaders from different backgrounds, and we teach and we empower each other. As we always say, that leadership, it's a journey. Leadership, it's not a destination. Those people who become great leaders are people who empower themselves. So thank you so much to you colleagues who are always here with us, and thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And a special welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. If it's your first time attending this session, thank you so much. You're so welcome, and please enjoy yourself. You'll be meeting your peers here. There is no need to be shy. There is no need to be diffident. So please express yourself. We'd like to learn from you as much as you'll be learning from others as well. So this is a safe space. You can just express yourself. What is going to happen, we are going to introduce our speaker. He will address us, and then we can engage him and engage each other. You can raise your hand, and then we will acknowledge you, or you can do that via chat room. Tonight we have my brother. It's one of our regulars here, so his name is quite familiar, and I'm so glad that he really availed himself, because he's a very busy person, even though he always participates here, and we always learn from his contributions. My brother, Dr. Pat Mazibuko, he's the one who will be empowering us tonight. As I'm saying that, really, he's talking to other leaders, so many people who are here in the call, who is our past speakers. And actually, I always say the majority of people who are here are our past panelists and our past speakers. So we learn from each other, which is wonderful. So let me not waste any time. As I've said, that we do have the challenge of load shedding. Obviously, we'll start with whoever was here already. Let me introduce my brother, Pat. I'll try and summarize his bio, and then he will address us, and then we'll engage with him. We are discussing leadership identification and positioning tonight, and he will be taking us through. So Dr. Pat Mazibuko is a seasoned senior executive with a proven track record in the fast-moving consumer goods space, i.e. Unilever, power generation, transmission, and distribution, including telecommunications sectors, of which more than 20 years has been in executive management roles. He has a unique ability to work with all stakeholders, focusing on implementing strategic and operational processes, incorporating long-term profitable strategies. This includes leading multidisciplinary teams spanning from operations and maintenance and execution of mega projects. Dr. Mazibuko has demonstrated a leadership trait by successfully leading in any environment and building high-performance teams leading to improved customer experience. He's a board member of Intalia, Comric, IOD, and is a member of IOD and SAIA, and etc. He has a passion for leadership in any environment, and solving complex problems excites him. Also, his passion for serving the Lord and his people. He holds a view that all of us must find a way of giving back to our communities. That is not limited to giving money, or rather to giving money only, but time and skills. Hence, he has a program called the Leadership Game, or the Leadership Game Session, where he runs leadership sessions once a month, dealing with different facets of leadership. He believes that people are the greatest asset that you have in any organization, but they must all understand that they are there to serve the needs of a customer. Without customers, there is no business and no tomorrow. He is viewed as an unconventional business leader in the industry, as he thrives in touching people's hearts and mind in driving performance. He has produced many capable leaders, and some even more capable than himself. His qualifications includes, among others, the PhD, that is Doctor of Philosophy in Management of Technology and Innovation. Also, he's got an MBA and a Bachelor of Administration degree and a National Diploma in Electric Engineering. That is Dr. Pat Mazibuko. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let us welcome him as he's going to address us. Siyabonga Baba, Mwelasa. Siyabonga, my brother. We are all yours, and thank you so much once more for availing yourself to share your insights with us. As you know, we are part of us in this platform. You know how we work. You know the processes, even the caliber of people who attend. And thank you so much for availing yourself. We are so eager to learn from you. Over to you, Dr. Mazibuko. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Prof. Majola. Greetings, colleagues, and all protocol observed. Prof, can you see me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Colleagues, I just want to say that I'm just a humble servant of the servant. I am not a leadership guru, but I am very passionate, and also like Prof. Majola, a permanent leadership student. Prof, allow me just to start off with this. You know, I like telling stories. I think it's one of the good leadership traits. There was once a man who was a farmer, and he had his wife who was an executive or a house executive. So this farmer came back home at about midday, you know, with his boots full of mud and everything else. So he got into the house that has just been cleaned by his wife. So his wife took a shotgun, shot and killed him. And it so happened that they were about 1.8 kilometers away from the police station. So the maid called the police. The police finally got there at about 12:30. And then, to cut the long story short, the lady was finally arrested at about 2:30, 2:45. So fast forward, it got to a point where now the lady had to go and appear in court. The magistrate then was in charge of the process. He then looked at the officer that had arrested the lady, and he said to the officer, "Well, are you the officer that arrested the lady?" The officer said, "Yes, Your Honor." And he said, well, according to the documents I have here, you got to the crime scene at about 12:30. The officer said, indeed, Your Honor. And then the magistrate said, well, looking at the time that you finally made the arrest, it then tells me that the lady was basically giving you some hard time. The police then turned around and said, sir, she was not giving you some hard time. I had to wait for the floor to dry up. The floor was still wet. So colleagues, a very good afternoon, and I think that the floor is dry for all of us to basically participate. So I just want to start off by giving you an introduction. So Prof, my approach today was that I'm not going to talk long. I just want to drop certain key points that we can use to have an open debate. Like you said, we will then have to engage each other. So our topic today is leadership identification and so on, but this is what I want to bring. It is not every leadership position that can be occupied by any type of leader. That is where I'm departing from. We have to find the right leadership type for the right leadership position. So let me just take you through this short journey, Prof, and my fellow colleagues. So what do I recommend that we hire for when it comes to leadership position? One, I thought long and hard about this, and as a passionate leader, I thought, let me just coin a particular phrase just for today and call it a leadership smoothie. So I have put in some ingredients that I recommend that we use for this leadership smoothie as we look into the identification of leadership for a particular position. The first ingredient is what I call attitude. I personally hold a view and a belief that a particular leadership position requires a particular leadership attitude and character. It is therefore a deal breaker that an appropriate attitude and character is identified for a specific leadership position. I want to give you an example. In most family businesses, my fellow colleagues, when they graduate to be a national or a global business, they normally commit a fatal error by appointing a family member in a critical leadership position who in actual fact does not deserve or is not fit for that leadership position. And then when there are challenges during their tenure, one could turn around and be rude and say, unlike you, I was not voted into this position. It's a family business. What they do not understand is that this kind of attitude is a business killer of all costs, at all costs. And another one that I can use as an example is a church. A number of times, some of the charismatic churches are started by parents, grandparents, and then when it gets to the appointment or the succession of some sort, they will take a person who's an integral part of the family so that they could protect the family interests. And we've seen how that tends to backfire at the end of the day. But the very same thing, Prof, and my fellow colleagues, applies in some of the organizations in critical positions where people are appointed simply because of a family name. You know, you come from the famous Majola family, and the head of that family shot up to the ranks, and people, here is this poor little boy coming in there, and they fast track him because he comes from a family with a good name. And yet he does not have the attitude and the character that will allow him or her to thrive in that position. So even in corporate organization, we've seen the same. So let us move on. What is the second ingredient? The second ingredient in this so-called leadership smoothie is what I call, fellow colleagues, a teachable spirit. So being a leader in a leadership position does not necessarily mean that you are the most learned person, experienced, and knowledgeable person in that team. One needs to have a teachable spirit where you allow your team to teach you certain fundamentals that you do not necessarily have, and in so doing, you create a positive dynamic in your team, and by default, the smell of the place is good. So I just want to talk about the smell of the place a little bit. You know, some of the people that we put in certain leadership positions, because of certain attitude and the lack of a teachable spirit, you can smell the place to be very awful. Now you can get that awful smell from that space where they basically work in. So if you are lucky enough to have been able to pick up a person that has got a teachable spirit, I normally call it a gift to the employees. So I want to move on from this point by saying, you learn nothing from life if you think you are the right person at all times. However, having a leader with a teachable spirit is a gift to employees, as I've said, and as thus is often viewed as an integral part of servant leadership. It brings out the best in employees. However, the opposite is also true. A team that is led by a leader who lacks a teachable spirit tends to be dysfunctional over a passage of time, and it kills employee passion. Then the third ingredient that I want to talk about in this leadership smoothing, in preparing for this short conversation, is what I call an ethical character. I often say it is unfortunate as this one cannot be bought. It is either you have it or you don't. And colleagues, once I acknowledge that this is a very broad subject, but I want to zoom into one area of specific interest. That is profit versus people. You would like to hire an ethical leader full of integrity at all material times. A leader who would always put people over profit, not the other way around. Sadly, a lot of unethical leaders have actually messed up and actually the name of their own families as well. And open conversation, we're going to talk about this and ask ourselves, what would you personally do if the price is right? And we do know that a number of people have turned a blind eye when the price is right. Then the fourth ingredient that I want to bring to our attention is what I call courageous leadership. You want also to appoint or pick up a leader that can stand for what they believe. An organization can do the number of those people who are selfless leaders. Then number 5 is consistency. This is one of the killers of leadership in a particular leadership. If it's not there, you want to identify a leader who stays true to himself or to herself and to their beliefs. Lack of consistency from a leader leads to confusion, frustration, and despondency by the employees. This could be a great trigger for what we call great resignation. And then number 6 is what we call emotional intelligence. And Prof and my fellow colleagues, I just want to argue on the following. I know that most people focus on IQ, and I've got no issues with IQ. For me, focusing on IQ when you hire or when you identify a leader for a particular position, it's just standard operating procedure. I would want to recommend that EQ be part of a deal breaker in leadership identification and positioning. We've seen on a number of occasions that picking up a leader with the highest IQ, but being low or zero IQ to that degree is a recipe for disaster. Experience has proven that lack of EQ from a leader often leads to dead bodies in a team and ultimately a great resignation. Let me repeat this. Experience and also to some degree empirical evidence has proven that lack of EQ from a leader often leads to dead bodies in a team and ultimately a great resignation. Then the very last ingredient in that leadership smoothing is what I call technical competence. And I'm sure as some of our colleagues are listening, they wonder, what is Dr. Ben trying to say? So for me, technical competency, when you look to identify a leader for a particular position, is just a small part, because you can develop technical competence, but you cannot develop the other stuff. So you must make sure it's there. So this is the last thing that I would consider in the process of hiring a leader in a leadership position. I would not hire any person in a leadership position if the top 6 are not in place. This is where, when it comes to technical competency, this is where you drive performance excellence if all the other ingredients are in place. It is not a leadership smoothie if it does not have the other 6 ingredients. So I want us to think about this. But as I move on to the next one, I want to close this part by saying there's a currency that I think, Prof, we cannot afford to turn a blind eye on when we identify a leader for a particular leadership position. And that currency in my world is what you call a trust currency. The absence of a trust currency in a leadership position is another recipe for disaster. Okay, now that we've spoken about or have created a baseline, I want to move on and then identify something for ourselves. So colleagues, I want us to move on and talk about the following. And I want to steal from the Holy Book, the Bible. You know, when the Israelites in the book of Genesis were kept captive in Egypt, the good Lord said, I've heard the cry of my people. So I am now taking a conscious decision. I'm going to move them out of Egypt. So the good Lord chose Moses to free and lead the Israelites out of Egypt. And I would say to you, colleagues, and I would argue this, that Moses was found to be the most suitably qualified person in the eyes of the good Lord to do the job. I would also think that the Lord wanted a middle-aged person with a bit of a thick skin, just in case Pharaoh irritated him every now and then. And yes, Pharaoh did that a number of times. But the Lord seemed to have put a specification of a person who follows instruction, a typical doer. One of the things that I talk about is different types of leadership, and there are people who are doers. And Moses seemed to have been a person who was a typical doer who followed instructions to the T. And you could probably see in the Bible that he was told to put the 10 commandments, do this and do this, and he followed everything to the T. Doers are known to follow instructions point to point. They are not expected in a number of ways to use their discretion. And I just want to say, take a look at Moses. Moses seemed to have followed every instruction that the Lord had put for him up until one point. And that was the point that spelled the end of the Moses era. Please do note that by that time the Israelites were out of Egypt. Now, I want to bring it closer to you again. When God wanted to find a leader who was now going to take or navigate the Israelites from where they were at to cross the river Jordan and into the promised land, he must have put a different specification. And that specification was made by 2 gentlemen, that was Joshua and supported by Caleb and others. So in God's mind, I think it must have been very clear that Moses did not possess the skills to basically get the Israelites across the river Jordan, settle them in there, get them to thrive. So why am I talking about this, colleagues? I am saying in the process of identifying leaders for a particular leadership position, you've got to say, what is it that I require this person to fulfill? Because it is not every leader that you handpick that will be able to do that. But even if they are able to do that, they will not be able to do it for the rest of their lives. So it is important that they are given a particular time frame. Now, I want to bring this closer to our own environment in South Africa. There is a famous group called Lady Smith Black Members. And I'm not talking about them, Prof, because that's where I hail from. But it is because I've been taking a closer look at their journey. The founder, the late Professor Joseph Begizizwe Shabalala, demonstrated great leadership wisdom and foresight in that he identified and groomed a new leader or a successor at an early stage. He found a young guy, Sibongiseni, who happened to be very agile, very creative, very dynamic, and Sibongiseni is humble, very passionate, but relevant and very vibrant, a visionary leader for the very small black members. As it came to a point where the late Professor Shabalala had to finally take a day of his final sleep, Ladies Black Mambazo was now in the hands of a new leader who was very dynamic and so on. So you can see that investment that you need to make in making sure that you identify leaders to occupy a particular leadership position is quite important. But let me bring it closer to where I work. In TELKOM, the former group chief executive, Sipho Masego, mastered the art of succession management in that he basically followed the very same thing. You know, how he identified Serame, took him through in terms of the handover process, and he said, yeah, you are Serame, you're on your own, it's now your show. So he must have realized that the Sipho Masego era had come to an end. And what we tend to have a challenge in Africa in particular is that we are unable to understand that people's sell-by date has come. So I want now to sort of bring in some key messages. First and foremost, you need to identify a suitable leader for a particular position for a particular period of time. And let me re-emphasize that. You need to identify a suitable leader for a particular position for a particular period of time. You do that having gone through the steps that I have explained at the beginning, in brackets, leadership smoothing. Secondly, experience and empirical evidence have taught us that some leaders are only suitable for a particular leadership position only for a limited period of time. And that is why it is important that we apply our minds when we identify a leader for a particular leadership position. If they stay longer than that, they are the first ones to destroy the legacy they have created over a passage of time. Thirdly, we can learn a lot from the construction industry. When you look at the complex and mega projects, and from concept to handover, the tools and the resources that you use during the project startup are not necessarily the tools that you use when you complete the project. If that is the truth, that stands the test of time, why can't we embed that learning in the leadership space? Number 4, we need a leader that will come in, really pour out his or her heart and soul into the job, move on before they reach their sell-by dates. And I am very careful, colleagues, but experience has taught me that some of the leaders want to stay for longer than they were supposed to, and they're the first one to kill the very same legacy they've created. Number 5, throughout the passage of time for any organization, you need to identify different leaders who can help navigate the organization for a defined period of time with some clear deliverables. He or she must prepare himself to move on before they are the first one to demolish the same legacy that they've created. Then number 6, identify a leader who is not defined by the position. I'm going to repeat. Identify a leader who is not defined by the position, but by how they lead during their tenure, by how they prepare themselves to hand over a better organization to their successors than they found it. And that is how, among other things, you identify a leader for a particular position. Whatever it takes, my fellow colleagues, there's always a difference between a Moses type leader and a Joshua and a Caleb type. There are times when you need a particular leader who's pragmatic, and you cannot run an organization for 3 decades with a pragmatic view. You need to change the style and inject new dynamics. There are times when you need a leader who's assuring, an assuring leader, and that comes in at a particular point when an organization is going through certain dynamics. And there are times when you need a turnaround specialist. A turnaround specialist probably maximum 5 years, and they come out, bring somebody else, will set an organization and take them to the next level. but all of them should have a limited tenure. And I want to implore you to pay specific attention to certain lead indicators telling you that a particular leader's sell-by date is quickly approaching. Move him out before it becomes toxic to the organization. So, Prof, now let me close by telling a story. I started by telling a story. I want to close by telling a story. There were two students. It was Duduzi and Tabo, and they were coming from one of the famous higher education institutions. So Tabo had a pact with his mother that if he passes all his modules, his mother was going to buy him a 3-series BMW. So after the exams, Tabo was on a holiday somewhere where the network was not that good. So he found a spot. He called his friend Duduzi, and he said to Duduzi, listen, bro, I don't have a good network where I'm at, so I'll check my text every now and again whenever I can, but please go and check my results as well. So if I don't think I'll pass all of them, out of 7, probably I'll pass 5, and if I pass all of them, then they'll be great. He said, look, I may probably pass one, I miss 1 or 2, but if I pass all of them, just send me a text and say 3 series. Then I know I would have passed all of them. And he said to Duduzi, if I had missed or failed one module, send me a text that says, greetings, Tabo. And then he said, if I had failed 2 modules, send me a text that says, greetings, Tabo, and your mother. So do checks Tabo's results, and he texts as follows. Greetings, Tabo, your mother, your siblings, the neighborhood, and the district. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you, Dr. Mazibuko. Dr. Mazibuko indeed is coming from Ladysmith, originally from Ladysmith. One of the things that you may not know is that he's an author as well. He's got beautiful books that he has authored. Obviously, also he's the senior executive at TELKOM, or group executive at TELKOM, responsible for safety, security, and forensics. So thank you so much for these nuggets that you've given us in terms of as a leader, because obviously the people who are here, if I see the name, almost everyone here, you've got team members, you are employing people, you are identifying people, you put people into positions, and really he has challenged us in terms of what do you look for when you identify a good person. So he's giving us those ingredients, and also what do you do in terms of positioning yourself. So it's time now to engage Ubaba Mazibuko on what he has said, and also to engage each other, as I'm saying that really this is a very important topic that we are dealing with as leaders, as executives, as managers, as we have people working for ourselves or for us, sorry. So it's a question of how do we handle those people and how do we handle ourselves. We spoke about the challenge of what we'll call the first generation leaders in different organizations. So the first generation leader is someone who commonly known as a starter, or as someone who is a creator, someone who built that organization from scratch, someone who started that organization from scratch. The challenge when the person is now identifying successors, that others will always look closer to them, whether their sons, their daughters who must take over, whether it's wrong or right. Obviously, there's both advantages and disadvantages. And he spoke about trust, because the key word there is trust and loyalty. You want to put someone you know that is not going to destroy this business that I've built so many years, or this organization that I sacrifice so much to build. So you identify someone, and the question is, the son or the daughter that you are appointing will have the same passion and the same purpose that you have, or you will always say that, this was it's my father's or it's my mother's business. So that's a wonderful thing. That is why we always say leadership is a very dynamic thing. There's so many factors that as a leader you've got to take into cognizance when you lead or when you engage people. So thank you so much, Dr. Mazibuko. That is very, very powerful that you said. But another point that I took from you is the same status, or you would say the risk takers and the caretakers. Risk taker, someone who starts something from the scratch, is a risk. And then normally these people don't have the ability and the capability to build what they've started. And risk takers, they always think that they must be the one who are taking care of. Whereas it's very important to know yourself and to understand your strengths, to say that if you're a risk taker, you are someone who starts things, you make things happen, then you've got to have a caretaker, someone who will take care of what you have started. So don't be a risk taker and become also an undertaker. So you've started something and then also you destroy what you have started just because you don't want to let it go. You don't want to say that, yes, I've started this, I've built this organization, but now I don't have certain capabilities. I need to go out there and find people who can run this organization for me, even if it means to let it go and then just let those people to run the organization. Of course, you want to lose your organization by getting people who can do it for you. So those are the dynamics that we found in the world of leadership. And what do you say, ladies and gentlemen? Let me start with my brother there. I can see that my brother Andre Young. These are top things. These are very, very serious issues, Mr. Young. You've been in this leadership journey for a while, sir. What would you say when it comes to these dynamics? Mr. Young? Mr. Young, can you hear me? If Mr. Young is not there yet, or is still busy, I see a hand there from Aubrey Lisita. Aubrey, over to you.
Yes.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. Go ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Mazibuko. So my question is coming from an appointment point of view. So when making an appointment for someone who is going to be in a leadership position, I understand that there is what you have just spoken about is a leadership. What's the name that you used? A leadership smoothie, and you were talking about the traits of what makes a leadership smoothie. But I'm trying to understand, so when it comes to having to make an appointment for someone who's in a leadership position, how would you go about making that final decision to appoint that particular individual? Because I understand that if these are traits, these are things that you have to have been able to monitor or see from this individual. And if it's appointment based on having to do an interview, it is obviously not something that are going to live out or not necessarily going to show in the process of an interview. So I feel like it's something that would perhaps need to have been to be done in a way that you're able to monitor the person's behavior and also to see if they're really living out this particular trait. So do you think that there are any sort of mechanisms that can be used to approach the situation where you are trying to appoint someone and also trying to put into context those traits that you spoke about? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Aubrey. Over to you, Dr. Mazibuko.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. I've got to declare that I'm not an HR specialist, but I've done a lot of recruitment. So there are certain tools that when you recruit, you also use to identify whether a person will fit the kind of environment that you're looking for. And there are quite a number of them and they are available. But for me personally, and I would also like to hear what other people are going to say. But for me personally, Prof. Aubrey, it's also, I will also just throw in a very simple question and watch the logic of answering a question. Let me give you one. I may probably give throw in a question and then probably guide them a little bit and see the response. And an example would be, if I ask a question and the answer would be, this is difficult but possible, or the answer would be saying, this is possible but difficult. I mean, from an ordinary person, this sounds like it's a very easy answer, but it separates men from the boys. You know, so there are certain tools that are like that you use, and I've got my own preference, and I'll tell you why. I'll go for the one that says, this is difficult but possible. I'll tell you why. The one that says this is possible but difficult, it means he gets started straight away and then hits a brick wall and says, there's a problem here. Whereas the one that says this is difficult but possible, it says to me, he or she applies his or her mind and understands exactly what he's facing and then puts a plan to basically deal with those things. So I'm also here trying to learn. It will be interesting, what are the views based on the question from the platform? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Doc. Thank you very much. I see another hand there from my brother there, Dr. Mabizela. Over to you, my brother, Doc.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Good evening, Prof. Majola. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Then good evening, Dr. Pat, and thanks very much for the insightful introduction and brief that you've given us on a very important topic on leadership identification, which is very, very important for any organization, but also leadership positioning. For me, leadership identification, I can easily interchange it with a leadership succession, because these two are very much linked to one another, in the sense that if you as a leader in a particular organization, knowing very well at some stage, I will have to move from that position of leadership in that particular organization. I have to take somebody by the hand and groom him or her as a future prospect to take over my position. Now, that requires wisdom, and also that requires openness and open-mindedness, in the sense that you need to make sure that consciously you select someone that not necessarily will be your best suitable person insofar as the outlook and the position currently they hold in a company, but it's somebody that will fit in best in a position that you'll be moving out of. I come from a Dr. Miles Monroe School of Teaching, who used to say, how do you measure the value and the impact of a good leader? how do you really weigh and also make sure that, you know, this person, according to you, is indeed a good leader? A good leader, according to me, is the one that can create other leaders that will surpass his or herself in leadership, in the role that he or she has been bestowed upon him or her. So that is very important. For me, leadership, you need to take a conscious decision. At some stage, I will need to move out. And I always say, for me personally, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business leader, I'm a businessman, as much as I'm a community leader as well. But in any leadership position that I am deployed into, or I am given the responsibility to lead, I make sure that I work myself out of the position, not into the position. Working yourself out of the position guarantees that there will definitely be succession, guarantees that there will definitely be qualitative succession, because you will be willingly, you know, and committedly take somebody by the hand, show him or her the ropes, and teach them. And by so doing also, you as a leader, by the way, have got a lot to learn, maybe from even your successor in that position of leadership. Because when you're working with somebody of a different mindset, you are inclined to have different opinions on a similar thing and come up with a good, ultimately, end result that is beneficial to the organization that you're serving in the leadership position. So for me, very importantly, identification of a leader by a current leader is very key. And the positioning thereof as well. Let everybody know, all in sundry, know that, you know what, there is definitely a possibility for succession, and so is being groomed maybe to succeed, because the leader who at the time is in a position has identified somebody. It's not somebody that because I'm related to or is a friend of mine or somehow there is certain influences, but it's somebody that is authentic, somebody that is genuine, and somebody that is Christian insofar as leadership is concerned, to take the organization to the next level. That is very important. And sometimes it is indeed a challenge, I must say, identifying such people, because I know from a business point of view where one is operating, you groom somebody to take over or somebody to do exactly what you're doing. And by the time that that person has been groomed to that position, or to that level rather, before even the position, that person decides, I'm not gonna stay here anymore. I can actually start my own thing and do the same thing. So you need to be mindful of that as well. And don't feel bad when such things happen. Don't lose hope, you know, and don't lose focus. Groom somebody else. Maybe you might as well simultaneously try two different people to groom into a particular position without making it very clear to them, but somehow subtle and very diplomatically, you know, introduce them to certain ways of doing things in a particular position of leadership that you're in, and see how they react. You know, push them bit by bit and see who actually responds better than the other, and how does the other one respond, you know, because people are not the same. You might teach somebody the same thing, or two people the same thing, and they won't respond the same way. And the outcomes are different. And some people are very quick and sharp and to adapt to a particular leadership role, and some are not necessarily, but still they remain good leaders. So that is very important. So leadership is about identification, and positioning is very key in any organization's success, especially moving to the next level. As you alluded from the Bible, you know, Moses, and of course, Joshua, Aaron, Caleb, Jonathan, you name them. You know, there is different leaders for different seasons. There is different leaders for different phases of life. We had a leader called Nelson Mandela, and he fulfilled a particular mandate in South Africa. And now we've had after him many different leaders, whether you like it or you don't, but they were serving a particular purpose. And that's how life is. There will always be continuation of leadership by different characters. Now, what is very important in leadership is character. You need leaders with a good character. Character is everything in leadership. You need not to be questioned about what you said, about where you stand on a particular matter because of your character. People, in fact, they will, on your behalf, stand for you if you have a character. And ethical character leadership is what is required. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's very scarce. And we need such in a prosperous country, in a prosperous organization, in a prosperous business. Thank you very much. That's my short input. And sorry, I might cut off because we have load shedding in my area, but luckily it hasn't started as yet, so I'm not too sure when it's going to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much, Dr. Mabizela. Thanks, my brother. Indeed, we've said that other colleagues will be kicked out anytime and others will be joining us because of others who would have joined us, maybe will not be able because of load shedding. But thank you so much for your contribution. Thanks a lot. That's powerful. We've learned a lot from there. Let me just ask my brother, the Bishop Maxwell Perkisi, what are you saying, say, on the leadership identification? Bishop? So the bishop, oh, okay, I can see it's coming.
Prof, and good evening, colleagues.
Go ahead, Bishop. Yes, sir.
You know, I kind of joined. I joined in a little bit late, so I'm enjoying the conversation.
Okay, so thank you. Bishop, are you still there? Or were you just saying you joined late and we've lost the bishop? Okay, hopefully it's not the load shedding, he will still come back and then we still hear him. My sister Tibelo, how are you, sis? I hope we are able to express yourself wherever you are. Load shedding is not inhibiting you there. Sis Tibelo?
Good evening, Doc. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, sis,
and everybody that's on the line.
Yeah.
I thank you for a wonderful, session. I did join in the middle of the presentation by the good doctor, but I want to support, the message that he has provided, and I also want to support a comment that was made just now by one of the speakers around, a good leader knowing when to step down and not waiting, to be moved out of the position. And I think this is one of the things that is quite key. However, I also think that we need to celebrate when we hear of those leaders. I think we spend so much time hearing about the leaders that are, sitting in positions and not going anywhere. And yet we also know so many that, have managed to recognize when the time has come for them to open the opportunity for others. I don't think we celebrate those leaders enough, because the more we make noise about those types of leaders and what they have done to be able to open opportunities for others, the more we give confidence to other leaders who, may be thinking the same, but may not have heard or seen or witnessed other leaders doing it. So if we can, on this platform and other platforms similar to this, be able to celebrate them, I think we start helping the narrative that says you don't have to be in a leadership position forever. By you moving on and creating opportunities for others, you give others, you share your light with others and you give others the confidence to be able to step into their leadership role. So thank you so much. It's great once again to be on the platform. Thanks, Prof.
Thanks, sis. Thanks, my sister. Thank you very much. There's another question there. I think it's from Bongo Musa Madlogovu. Bongo Musa, would you like to express yourself? I know that you've written the question there in the chat room, but we can give you the opportunity maybe to express yourself. Bongo Musa? Unless you would like us to read your question. So Bongo Musa's question, Doc says, thanks, Doc Pat, for the powerful and informative dynamic points of leadership. My question, how to implement a strategic leadership on a PhD? Oh, okay. I thought it's our PhD. That's why I was saying a strategic leadership on PhD. Okay. That is pull him or pull it down syndrome environment. That's why I always prefer people to express themselves. So how do you express strategic leadership on the pull him or pull it down syndrome? Dr. Pat?
Thank you, Madlogovu. I don't know whether I'm going to give you an answer to this, but let me just give it a try. You know, the issue of PhD, the pull him or head down syndrome, I think it's an issue of mentorship and coaching at an early stage. If I had a brother or a sister when I was a young boy, a head boy, they would have said to me, Pat, you see that guy over there is doing great, you know, and what will it take you to get there and equip me? It changes the views that I have, that of having an appetite or a temptation to go and work against him. So I think we should invest in mentoring and coaching young people such that when they see one of us or one of them having a better potential and opportunity, they do not find themselves being tempted to work against them, but they find themselves being thrown closer to them so that they can learn from them and find better ways of getting themselves better. Prof, that's the best I can do right now, but maybe it's a topic for another day. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Dr. Mazibuko. As I said, that PhD a little bit confused me, but it's a pull him or pull head down a syndrome that we find in organizations. And one of the most important thing in leadership, it's when you are not intimidated by your colleagues or by your team members. As a team leader, you've got to push your team members, and also it's a spirit which says, and then that's what Dr. Mazibuko said, teachability spirit. Teachability spirit is not only from team members or followers, but also from you. Actually, it must start from you as a leader, because leadership starts from within. It starts from self. You've got to develop and have that spirit of teachability, which will say, I don't know everything. I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn from my seniors or from the bosses. I'm here to learn from my team members, from my colleagues, from everyone, even from anyone that I meet. There will always be something that I'll learn from that person. So if we are that kind of a leader, then we are not going to be intimidated by other people because you will not think that you must know everything, because definitely leadership, actually leadership is not about knowing everything, because you will commit suicide. You cannot know everything. Otherwise, you are there just to, as an orchestra conductor, where you can just conducting and getting people to do certain things. There's a beauty with leadership, because you always learn from other people. I don't know if Mr. Young is back. My brother Andre Young, I requested you to give a contribution there. I think We couldn't hear you earlier. Are you able to express yourself now, Mr. Young? Mr. Young still not, okay, Mr. Young still not there. Let me ask, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Now let me ask my another sister who has been in this leadership for a very long time, my sister Linda Peter, succession planning, you know, leaders who are intimidated, leaders who who are not consistent leaders, and how do we go about identifying and positioning capable and good leaders? Any thoughts there, Sis Linda?
Good evening, Prof. Majola. You caught me off guard there. I was still listening to all these thought-provoking, very important points on leadership that have been put forward by Dr. Mazibuko. And yes, succession planning. I think what I like most of what Dr. Mazibuko have said, it's about, I think he mentioned very two key things that resonated with me, that the risk takers and the care takers. And also when leaders know when it's time to move on. And I think we suffer from that quite a lot, where we want to hold on even when we know that we're no longer making an impact in organization. And mainly because we do not trust we don't trust other people enough, because we have not groomed people to take over from us when it's time to move on. Succession planning in organization, in my 20 years in leadership, it has been a tick box exercise where people will groom people that they are comfortable with, because they don't want to be challenged in their thinking. And we find ourselves, we're stuck with the same line of thinking all the time. So yes, it's good, and it can be effective if it is done the correct way. And it is done in order to grow the organization or to make an impact within the economy of the country. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Thanks, Sis Linda. Thank you very much. Let me ask my other brother there, Dr. Sifuko. Any thoughts there, my brother? Dr. Sifuko, yeah, he's coming. Over to you, sir.
Evening, Prof, and evening to colleagues. For me, Prof, I just want to comment, and I just want to hear from our speaker. You know, when you look at the township economy or the old shops that were there in the villages, you know, that ran the villages, even though there will be one bread, two bread, because there were very few people who can afford, but they were there and they looked rich. But then come our colleagues from Asia. They turn around the very same shop into a hub of activity. You see, you know, it's like this guy is making money, but when it was us in those places, You know, it was just like there'll be 5 breads, you know, there'll be 2 liters of cold drink and all those things. It was just like hand to mouth. But when our colleagues come, I think they are there from Messina to Cape Town, all over. So, and it seems like, you know, this hub of activity, what might be the cause? Is it lack of education from us because of apartheid, or because it's happening like universally from all the provinces and all the villages? So I just want, if you can touch on that. I know it was not too much on that, but you know, that's one of the succession, that the owner had it for 30 years, it was not booming. And then somebody succeeded from somewhere, took over as a succession, but now it's a booming business. And it's just universal in all our provinces. I just want him to talk about that succession from a family business to an outsider coming, and then the business goes boom like before.
Thank you. Thanks, Doc. Dr. Mazibuko, any thoughts on that? I know it's a very broad topic, and obviously it's got its own dynamics and challenges. What is happening on the township economy? Any thoughts, sir?
Thank you, Doc, and thanks, Prof. It's a very broad subject indeed. And we need to start off by asking ourselves a couple of questions. One of them would be, do we as Black people have faith in one another? You know, touching on one of the ingredients of the leadership smoothie, it's called teachable spirit. Do we have enough spirit that says we need to believe in one another? It's just that, because I think we've been very much damaged that we do not believe in one another. And I also, when I was young, was very fortunate to be amongst the stalwarts at some stage. One of them said, it is important that whilst we are celebrating political liberation, but we also embark in mental liberation. So I think right now we've not been able to achieve a lot when it comes to mental liberation. So we put less value when a product is being brought to us by our own, as opposed to when a product is being brought to us by somebody else. Second, thirdly, I think some of the businesses that we started in the townships, also in the villages, you know, it was about fulfilling a day-to-day need. There was no long-term vision. So sometimes when you walk past a particular business, you can see this guy that he or she is fulfilling a particular gap right now, but there is no future thought that has been embedded into this. So, because when you find that there's some future thought that has been embedded, even the packaging changes, the way you treat customers. And let's talk about customer. And I think Ella did talk about customer experience. If you go to these Asian shops that are now in our villages and townships, the customer experience that you get there is basically so different. It's chalk and cheese to what you get from your township brother or your village brother. So they have mastered some of these things, but in closing, I actually think that that mental liberation is important. But you know, Prof, we normally say all these great things. We don't say who's going to do it. So, Doc, I want to challenge us. At some stage, Prof, we need to make a call to action. We can't talk about these things and don't say what is the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. There's so many challenges, there's so many problems. And we always say in this platform that, yes, so obviously we're a think tank, we're exchanging ideas, but at the same time, thoughts needs to be implemented. We cannot be talking. We must provide solutions. We must be a think tank and a platform that will assist different stakeholders with solutions and provide solutions wherever possible. That's why we don't want just criticizing without giving possible solutions wherever possible. So indeed, I agree, and that's very, very important that you are saying. So ladies and gentlemen, we will be going towards the close now of our or closure of our session. I don't know if there's anyone still want to say a few things or any observation on the topic that we've just discussed before we ask Dr. Mazibuko to give us his closing remarks. As I've said that, I know that the load shedding is definitely disturbing many colleagues. But what I like is that we took a decision that will always hold these sessions. I mean, whether it's raining or cold, load shedding or no load shedding, whoever is here, and we've proven that it's always not about quantity, but it's about quality. Always, whenever we discuss something, we will always take something out of what we are discussing. I see that Bishop Pirkis is back. He had some load shedding problem as well. Yes, over to you, Bishop.
Thank you, Prof. And thanks a lot to Dr. Pat and all the colleagues who have contributed. I just wanted to emphasize the thing that I put on the chart there, particularly the last bullet, which I said, and apologies for the load shedding before, but I said the issue of succession is never done to protect your legacy. And it's always a temptation for many people. You want to put a person who is a yes person, who is going to continue with your own legacy. The thinking should be everything that we do from a succession plan is for the best interest or in the best interest of the organization or the institution. It's not about my legacy, protecting it or making sure that I don't get kind of prosecuted or whatever it is if you take it to another extreme. It should be in the interest of the institution or the organization. And it starts when you start your new job. Thanks very much, Prof. And thanks, Dr. Pat.
Wow, thanks, Bishop. Thank you so much. That's a very important point. And I always say each and every leader will always leave a legacy. And I know that whenever we talk about legacy, we always seem to think that it, of course, says we like to live or leaders to live good and positive legacy. So what legacy are you leaving? So that question would be saying that there is a legacy that you will leave. Is it a positive legacy? Is it a negative legacy? A good legacy? What will people remind you about? So it's very important what we're saying, that you put someone there, not about your legacy, but put someone there to grow the business and to make sure that what we have started is not going to die. Because I know most of you have started organizations. I'm one of those people. It's such a painful thing that to start something and then it dies because no one was there to take it and make sure that ran with it and grew it and developed it. So we'll always say that there was this particular organization, but there's no more there because you couldn't find someone who would build that organization. And I like what Bishop Pirkis is saying, and it's exactly what Dr. Mazibuko was saying, that it's not about you. It's not about you want someone who will succeed to someone who's closer to you, someone, of course, trust is very important, but it's very important that you are not just only moving for trust and loyalty, only to find that there's no competence and there is no passion to build that organization. So thank you so much. I think let's just, there's another, oh, Shemo, it's Musa. Thanks, sorry for not being responded. Flo, I can identify with you there, Mazwe. We are all in the same WhatsApp group, so I understand exactly what you're talking about. But thank you so much for your contribution in any case. Any thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, for the last one, as we are now, we'll be asking Dr. Mazibuko to close this wonderful session that he has been really moving us and challenging us. Any thought there? I see my sister there, Professor Mzinduna. Prof, I don't know if I'm hijacking you. Any thoughts on the question at hand there? Identifying right people to right positions, making sure that succession is there, making sure that organizations don't die because of certain individuals and because of certain personalities. Any thoughts there before we close, Prof. Nduna?
Thank you, Prof, and good evening, colleagues. My apologies that I've been scarce. I've been in transition, and I'm trying to settle. I'm getting settled now. I will be coming back to our Wednesday sessions. I'm in full agreement with this concern about leadership, and that we really need to make sure all the time that we choose the right people. I always say HR is the most difficult job for all managers, and it is not the job of HR. Actually, it is the job of the managers, who are the ones who pick the brains that are going to be the next leaders. It is the managers who are responsible for the succession plan. And a succession plan is not just about making sure that there is someone to take the baton. It's making sure that that person who's going to take the baton is actually a strategic person, is actually a visionary, is a leader. It is not the next available person in an organization. It is not the oldest person in the organization. It is not the person who has been there for longer. So we do not give this because we are compensating and we are expressing gratitude to people who have served the organization, but we're giving this strategically with insight into the kind of skills that the person has and the kind of growth that the person will bring to the organization. And I completely agree that we always should have a succession plan. There's nothing as disappointing, and we're starting to see that in different sectors as an organization looking for senior leadership, and they struggle to get applicants. And that is already starting to happen in a number of organizations, that we struggle to get applicants and we end up choosing from, like sometimes you've got a senior position and you get only 4 or 5 applicants, and it makes your life very, really difficult. So I think we should take succession planning very seriously. And we should, all of us as leaders, make ourselves available to mentor the next generation of leaders so that we leave the legacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, my sister. Thanks, Prof. Powerful. Thank you so much for your contribution. Thanks a lot. Just before I close, sorry. I know that my other colleague there, my brother, Dr. Chumamangis, has been struggling with load shedding. But Doc, any thoughts before we close? I know that we've been in and out, trying to log in, trying to go out. I'm so sorry. But any thoughts before we close, Doc Mangisa?
Yes, thank you very much, Prof, and thank you to Dr. Mazibuko. I just got in right at the tail end, but the topic it's a very influential topic. Succession planning. I cannot repeat, that which the Prof has said, but it is something that all of us as leaders, we need to embrace. It is something that we should know that without it, organizations are not going to go anywhere in as far as sustaining, themselves going forward. It may have been mentioned by Dr. Mazibuko to say, without competency management framework, without identifying precisely the competencies that a successor, must be developed upon, would just be doing it for the sake of doing it. So it's a good concept. If it's implemented very well, if there is a strategic approach to it, it will always work. Thank you very much, Prof.
Wow, thanks, Doc. Thank you very much, my brother. Before we lose the majority...
Did I get cut? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Doc. No, we had you. We had you, my brother. We had you. Yeah, we had to. So before we lose the majority of the people, probably I can just ask you, my brother, Dr. Mazibuko, to give us your your parting shots, and then after that, I'll then close the session.
Thank you, Prof. Let me also take an opportunity to thank the last two speakers, and just to add on one of them, I've often said we must guard against appointing the best of the West. And again, I want to say this, we must guard against appointing the best of the West. As my parting shot, I want to quote from Octavia Butler. She said, quote unquote, "Choose your leaders with wisdom and forethought. To be led by a coward is to be controlled by all the fears that a coward fears. To be led by a fool is to be led by the opportunist who control him. To be led by a thief is to offer up your precious treasures to be taken away from you. Equally true, to be led by a liar, it is to us to be told liars all the time. And lastly, to be led by a tyrant is to sell yourself and those you love into slavery. With that, Prof, thank you so much for affording me an opportunity. I certainly had a chance to learn as well. As always, I am grateful and I remain humble. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Doc. Thanks, my brother. Thank you so much for empowering us tonight. This is a very, very important topic. It's a topic that as leaders, we must always take into cognizance and always take it very seriously, because as we are saying, that organizations die not because the lack of people who can start them, but because of the people who will sustain them and making sure that they grow. So it's very important that how we identify people into positions is very important. And also once those people are in positions, how we treat them, as we always say here, that we must always remember that people do not leave organizations, but people leave managers. People don't leave companies, they leave leaders. There's so many people who leave their companies while they still love them very much, but because of the leader, the boss, the manager, and then a person finds himself or herself leaving. So it's very important. But also what we learned tonight is very important, that as leaders, we must work ourselves out of the position. We must not always work ourselves into the position. So while we are still holding that position, identify someone. You must make an exit plan already, so that who can take over how this position or this organization will grow without me or with me outside of the position. That's very, very important. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I know that we have so many challenges tonight with regard to load shedding, but thank you so much to all those who kept on coming back even when they were kicked out. But you could see people coming in, going out, coming in, and those people who managed to be with us, others that were using generators, like Bishop Pirikisi, after he was load shedded, made sure that he switched on the generator quickly, and others as well who made sure that they joined us even in the midst of load shedding. Please do join us again next week, Wednesday, as we meet every Wednesdays to sharpen each other and to empower each other as leaders and to grow together, because that's what leadership is all about. Thank you so much. And then the session is now adjourned, and then we'll meet again next week, Wednesday, for another powerful and insightful leadership conversation. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you next week, Wednesday. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Bye-bye.